So hello and welcome to VistaTalks, interesting discussions with interesting people from all around the world. I'm your host for today, Simon Hodgkins, and I'm delighted to be joined by Tatyana Sergeyeva. Tatyana is currently the Vice President, Credit Cards and Retail Services at Wells Fargo, an organization that's known the world over, and he's also on the WorldChicago Board of Directors. This is a non-profit organization that promotes citizen diplomacy through programs connecting, I suppose, the Chicago community to the wider world. She's fluent in 5 languages, which is incredible, and has lived in 5 countries. So a real global citizen joins us on the show today. Tatyana's experience goes across international consulting, financial services, content strategy, e-learning, and even publishing. So Tatyana, you're very welcome to the show today.
Hi, Simon. Happy to be here.
Thanks very much. Now, let's move on. Let's get into it. There's a lot to unpack there in the introduction that I just read out for people. Your life, if I can say, has kind of danced a little bit around languages. I mentioned that you speak 5 languages. So listen, let's start with that. Tell us more about that. And when did you know that language was going to be a real part of your career path?
Yeah, Simon, I love this question and I love your metaphor. I'm going to steal that one from you, dancing around a language. So yes, my love affair with languages started when I was 8 years old. As you can tell by my very Russian name, I was born and raised in Russia. So born in Soviet Russia, actually. And this may come as a surprise to some people, but even, during the Soviet times, we had these schools in the Soviet Union where kids would start learning a foreign language. Typically, it was English, French, or Spanish at a pretty young age. So in my case, it was 2nd grade. I started when I was 8. And the goal was essentially for these kids to become fluent by the time they graduate from high school. So my mom, who was a single mother raising 2 girls. She became a widow at a very young age. There was really not much she could do for us 2 girls to give us a better life, but she knew that she could give us good education, that she could give us, right? Because nobody can ever take your education away from you. So she really made sure that both my sister and I went to the school and that we learned the language and that we became fluent. The idea, of course, was that speaking a foreign language may give you an opportunity, a possibility for a better life, for a better job, etc. So, additionally, my sister, who is 10 years older than me, also was going to the same school. And so when I was going to the 1st grade, she was just graduating from that same school, and she was speaking English, and I just thought that she was the coolest person in the world. I absolutely idolized her. And I was going into the 1st grade at the same time. And I would practice my English with her, before entering school. And she would always make fun of my pronunciation. And I never thought that I would ever master pronouncing the sound, right? Because it doesn't exist in Russian. So I was so looking forward to 2nd grade, because this is when I would be starting to learn English. And finally that day came, and I went into my class and I met my amazing English teacher. And when the time came, to speak, and I just thought that speaking English was the best thing. I knew that this was what I was going to be doing, that I wanted to do 24/7. I just thought that it was the coolest thing. And this is when I knew, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. I just want to speak English or other language, just give me another foreign language to speak. So I studied English and I just thought it was so much fun. And I was always looking for opportunities to practice it with native speakers. But remember, I'm in Soviet Russia, so not too many opportunities to meet native English speakers, on the street. So I waited and waited. And finally, when I was 15, so 7 years later, I found out that I was shortlisted for an opportunity to go and study in the US as part of a cultural exchange program. And I thought, well, my God, that would be a dream come true. And so I went through a series of interviews with the Ministry of Education in the Soviet Union, and I passed those interviews, and I learned that, yes, I'm going to be going. I'm going to be going to the US. I'm going to be living with an American family for a whole year. I'm going to be going to a US high school. I'm going to be speaking English every day, 24/7. So, and when I arrived to the US, it was, it was just, I was so ecstatic. This was a dream, my dream coming true. I was learning English, and I found out that at my school, they were also offering Spanish. And I thought, well, that's cool. I love English so much. I'm sure I'm going to love Spanish just as much. So let me see if I can fit it into my schedule. And the first semester, unfortunately, I wasn't able to do that. But second semester, it worked out. I was able to take Spanish as part of my daily schedule. So, and of course, I was very behind. Everybody was a whole semester ahead of me, but I was determined to catch up. And it took me a few weeks to catch up. And when finally, the teacher was very surprised. She couldn't understand how I could catch up so quickly, and maybe even, be a little bit more advanced than other kids. But that made me realize, well, maybe the reason why this is happening is because I already have another foreign language in my back pocket that is helping me learn Spanish, which was, and that was what was giving me the edge over other kids. And I thought, well, this is so cool. I love Spanish again. This is my new favorite language. And when the time came to go to college, I said, well, okay, this is it. Spanish is going to be one of my majors. I picked another major, business as another major. And, with absolutely fell in love with Spanish. In college, my professors were native speakers, and I just had so much fun communicating with them. And I think this is when I really realized that when I was speaking with my professors who were native speakers of Spanish in Spanish, I noticed how their eyes would light up. I noticed that they would smile at me differently. They would speak to me differently. They would share different things with me. And this is what I understand. Well, this is how you connect to people from other cultures, is by speaking their language to them. And so, again, when the time came to go to grad school, I was absolutely determined to improve my Spanish, to a near native level. And I went to Madrid and studied there, and also picked up French and Italian along the way. I was at the Sorbonne. I took classes at Alliance Française, as well as in college. And so this is kind of how it all came along. All of these languages. I had a kind of a brief stint with Japanese as well. But so this is how it all started. And I knew essentially, when I was a very young girl, that this is going to be it. This is going to be my life.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that, because it's an incredible story, and it's a rich story. And I think that term that we used in terms of dancing with languages is very apt, because, from, the single mom with two daughters, and I suppose people often talk about the gift of education, don't they? And your ability to then converse and speak fluently with people in their native language, their sort of mother tongue, if you like. And you describe that sort of sparkle in their eyes, and they open up a little bit more. And we often talk about, making sure that the words that you're using resonate with the people, because, there's a very famous saying in this industry that if people can't understand it, they won't buy it. And, the fact that you are speaking 5 languages, I think, is incredible. I think that's
You have
really
to, yeah,
good. So
you touch their hearts.
you do, absolutely. It makes an emotional contact. Yeah, you're right.
An emotional connection. I agree.
Well, listen, let's move the story on a little bit for our listeners. So you started working as a teacher then, right? And you moved also into the editorial world, and I mentioned publishing earlier on. So I'd like you to maybe tell me a little bit about that. And I know that then sort of brings you into the localization industry. So, I'm interested in finding out about the teaching, the editorial world, the move into localization. What were the sort of the decision-making paths that you took? And then, of course, you have a natural flair and love of language. So it seems to be an obvious fit that you're in the localization. So could you just maybe unpack that a little bit for us?
Sure, yes. And, even though, Simon, you mentioned 3 different industries, which seemingly are different, but for me, there was a lot of connectivity between them. So my career started in teaching and education, and I never wanted to be a teacher. So I loved my teachers. I always had great admiration for teachers. I played teachers when I was little, but this was not a career path that I really considered. So when I graduated, I completed my master's degree. Time came for me to look for a job, and I wanted to kind of, continue my life in the United States. So I started to look for work here in the US, and I sent out a few applications, and I, wasn't getting really a lot of responses. But finally, when I did get a response, it was from a private school in Chicago that was looking for a Spanish teacher. And I said, well, okay, I love Spanish. I'm not sure about teaching, but this school was also willing to sponsor me for a work visa. And I'm sure that a lot of you listeners understand, the importance of those words. That meant a lot. And I said, okay, well, let's give it a try. So I accepted the position and my teaching journey started. And it lasted for entire 8 years. It was a long time. And now that I look back at my teaching career, I just, remember these were some of the most remarkable, touching, enriching days of my career. I built very strong relationships with my students. I still call them my kids. I still am in touch with them. And I think that, we really made a difference in each other's lives. They definitely have lots of influence on me. I'm sure I had influence in some of their lives. So, but then after 8 years, I said, well, this was a great ride. I want to do something else. And I started looking into the editorial world because, there lots of publishing houses have international operations, or they offer products for the US Hispanic market. So I was able to use my Spanish no matter what. So I came across a publishing house, a fairly well-known publishing house, Encyclopedia Britannica, which surprisingly is headquartered in Chicago, but their international operations are quite extensive. And so they needed a project manager who would be able to manage their international projects, but at that time, most of their products were on the print side, right? So this was, I want to say 2008, right? So lots of print products, but they also needed a Spanish editor because a lot of their products were published in Spanish. So I thought, well, this is great. I'll be able to use my Russian and maybe my French, definitely my Spanish, communicate with people from all over the world and manage these projects. This is perfect. So I joined, and this is indeed what was happening. I loved every minute of it. But then also, of course, eventually the company's operations evolved and the products were mainly digital. So this is when I really started getting into localization. So the transition was very organic. And we were offering products primarily for Latin America in Spanish and Brazilian Portuguese. So this is where I really got, to kind of wet my feet in the localization area. So I was working cross-functionally. I was able to deal with our, third-party vendors in Latin America and, whatever contractors that we were hiring at the time, and really work with the product teams to make sure that the product, the features, the content that we were offering really resonated with our international audiences. So, and this is how it kind of all evolved. Just absolutely wonderful journey. Learned so much along the way, but this is how it all was happening.
That's great, isn't it? So from the sort of education years into teaching Spanish, right? And then
Correct.
from there into this publishing editorial world. And then, of course, the crossover then into localization makes an awful lot of sense. And because you're in this world, can I ask you, just from a personal perspective, what you love about the localization industry? What do you like about it?
Yeah, so for me, and we just, really kind of touched briefly on this, it's really understand well how you can connect to the people that you're trying to reach and really touch their hearts and increase your trust and really offer them what they want. So I think it's really, there's a very creative process also that comes along with it. Not, just not having a lot of knowledge is not, I don't think it's really enough. So I love that combination of your, previous experience and then the knowledge that you gained, and also the creativity that it gives you along the way. So this is something that I personally love about localization.
100%. And I think as the world keeps turning, we realize just how important this area is, because if we think about ourselves as global citizens and we're all connected in some shape or form, this being able to be understood and to reach people and to actually connect with people, it's so important, isn't it? And I think big brands are getting that more and more. And obviously coming from a publishing and a language background, it kind of makes sense. But I think wider general business areas are really waking up, or if they're already in it, are really starting to realize that this isn't a cost center. This is a real strategic driver, isn't it? It's a really important element.
Absolutely, 100% agree. And yes, it's very exciting. I think, especially for some brands are doing it better than others, but it's really exciting to see the right steps in the right direction.
So let's move on again. I mean, this is fascinating. Let's move on, because I want to touch on, and I know there's things going on. You've mentioned Chicago a few times, and you're involved in WorldChicago, as I mentioned earlier. So could you just explain to people that maybe not in the know, what is this WorldChicago operation that you're involved in? I know you're on the board of directors there, but just help us understand a little bit about that, would you?
Yes, I would love to. So my story with WorldChicago is really pretty interesting. So a few years ago, I really, was started to think that, well, I would love to join a board of a not-for-profit. And I didn't really have a specific organization at the top of my list that I was so passionate about. But what I knew was that this organization had to have, as part of its mission, cultural exchanges, right? So it had to allow people to experience other cultures firsthand. And needless to say, as I already told you, my experience as an exchange student in the United States was absolutely groundbreaking for me. I mean, it was life-changing in every sense of this word. And I really thought that if I could help other people to experience what I experienced, it will, not only help them improve their lives, change their lives, but it will also help them make a difference in their communities, right? So I started to do my search as to what organization I wanted to join as a board member. And I did a Google search, Simon, a plain old Google search. And I searched for organizations in Chicago, and a list came up. And some of the organizations I was pretty familiar with, but there was one specific organization that really stuck out and really started to resonate with me, and it was WorldChicago. And the mission of this organization is essentially, like you said before, citizen diplomacy, meaning that they give opportunities to professionals and youth all over the world to connect with Chicago, and vice versa. They give the opportunity to Chicagoans to host these visitors, professionals, young students, etc., so that there's this firsthand cultural exchange. So, and I thought that this is just amazing. This is spectacular. I want to help advance this mission. So I signed up to this organization's newsletter. I said, okay, well, let me learn a little bit more about them, about their programming and what they're all about. So I signed up to the newsletter. I was following the newsletter pretty closely for several months and participated in some of their events. I learned more about their programs. And then finally, in one of the newsletters, there was a message from the president, and it said that we are looking to add additional board members to our board. And if you're interested, contact us. And that's what I did. And we had a conversation with the president, and she kind of explained to me that when a potential board member contacts them about joining the board, they have them volunteer on a committee for a year to make sure that this is a good fit for everybody. So I joined the organization as a volunteer to be part of their marketing and PR committee. And I worked there for a year. I helped with their communication strategy. And then finally, just a few months ago, I was voted in as an official board member. And so now I chair the marketing and PR committee, and I'm part of the human resources committee, and I am part of the executive committee. And essentially, now I am really in the middle of all of these programs, all of these wonderful programs that the organization offers to people all over the world. So if you guys, if your listeners are interested, be sure to check out WorldChicago.org. This year is our 70th anniversary. The organization works very closely with the U.S. Department of State. So there's just it's a really, really, a gem of an organization. So I'm so excited to be on the board there.
Well, congratulations on your board position. It sounds like a really interesting organization, and I'm sure our listeners will check it out. So congratulations.
Thank you.
I suppose the thing that we haven't touched on, which I'm keen to explore as well, is we mentioned Wells Fargo, didn't we? And you've been working there for quite a number of years now. And the financial industry, I suppose, it continues to go through changes, doesn't it? There's a lot of technology changes. There's a lot of global changes taking place within the whole financial fintech world. And of course, Wells Fargo are front and center in that financial industry. Now, my understanding is that you work heavily in their sort of product area, in terms of looking at product management, but you also take, there's in-country language and customer experience. So could you maybe share a little bit about your role in Wells Fargo and a little bit about what are the kind of things that you're focused on at the moment?
Oh, sure, absolutely. And I think that, Simon, your listeners may find it interesting that I actually joined the organization as a part of the corporate communications team in the beginning. So this is where I originally started. And again, it was once again thanks to my knowledge of Spanish. So the corporate communications team that I joined nearly 4 years ago, and I was with the team for about 3 years. And so the team is all about diverse segments communications. And so when you think of a U.S. bank, they certainly cater to different diverse segments. So not just linguistically diverse segments. So when we talk about U.S., it's U.S. Hispanic, U.S. Asian segments, but also LGBTQ, people with disabilities, veterans. So these were the segments that our team concentrated on. And so I came on board as part of corporate communications to really lead the in-language strategy for the CorpCom team for the linguistically diverse segments, right? So US Hispanic, US Asian, and I also did quite a bit of translation for the company as well. So again, this was not customer-facing communications; these were the external-facing communications. External-facing communications meaning the media and the communities that the bank serves. So, and I thought that this was just so cool, and naturally I got interested in other diverse segments. And later my position evolved into also doing financial health communications. And given my big passion for the linguistically diverse communities, I also made sure that I was advocating for creating those same types of communications for our linguistically diverse communities. So I did that for a while, and I thought that this was, this was just so exciting, and it really made me feel like I was making a difference because, as you may be aware, financial health information may not be widely available to linguistically diverse communities, and we really wanted to make sure that we were sharing it with them and making sure that they were aware of the possibilities that were out there. So, but then after a while, I really kind of, realized that, well, I really would love to get that experience on the business side of things. One of my bachelor's degrees is business. I never really got a lot to do with it. So I'm like, why don't I try my skills on the business side? And there was a role open in consumer lending, specifically in the credit cards business. And actually, a lot of it evolves around content management. And because, again, in the US, we have to offer our content both in English and in Spanish when you think of financial services. So I thought, well, this is great. I'm going to be continuing to, still develop content for our US Hispanic audience and really make sure that we continue to provide the best experience for them possible. And even though it's not technically, an integral part of my role, given my background, I continue to be a fierce advocate of creating those experiences for our linguistically diverse audiences here in the US that, where we make sure that the content resonates, where we're sure that we're making sure that we're really connecting and we're really building trust with those communities. So again, as we develop digital products here in Wells Fargo, when we're launching new products, or when we're making adjustment to products, my first questions in meetings as well: what are we doing for the U.S. Hispanic segment, and how are we making sure that we're really delivering the best product for their needs?
No, absolutely. And it's interesting. You made me think about that. There's a friend of mine who actually works in the financial industry, not in Wells Fargo, in another organization. But I can remember a conversation I had with this gentleman probably 4 or 5 years ago, when he was saying to me the gap in financial information outside of, say, their sort of standard language offerings was huge. And there was a lot of regulations that came in. I can't remember the year exactly, but there's an awful lot of regulations that came in, and there's an awful lot when you look at banking and finance, where the importance of not just financial translation, I suppose, but the education of people with financial goods and services. It's really an important area, isn't it? And it's great to hear your sort of champion that cause within Wells Fargo.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, and the gap in financial information is very real,
Yeah.
at least in the US for linguistically diverse communities. So yes, absolutely. I'm doing everything that I can to advocate for those communities and really make sure that, the information that we offer really reaches them, and that it's accessible for them and really helps them, build better lives for themselves.
Absolutely. So look, we're heading towards the end of our time together. It's gone by so quick, but there's a couple of things I just want to ask you if I can. So we talked about language, of course, and 5 languages. Any more? Are you learning anything else, or are you happy at the 5? I mean,
Oh my God,
I'd be very happy at 5.
Anytime. I mean, I honestly, I can't wait to get back to language learning. I have a 12-year-old son, so that takes. I really want to make sure that I spend time with him. But actually, he's fluent in Chinese. So, and even though Chinese is one of my languages, but when he started learning it in his immersion program, I kind of try to say some words, and of course he just thinks I'm no good and I will never get it. But maybe not. I have to catch up to my son.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That sounds like the project for sure. That's great. And I suppose the last thing I wanted to ask you is, we talked a little bit about WorldChicago earlier on, but is there anything else you'd like to maybe share with our community?
Yes, absolutely. And I think, this opportunity will really be, applicable or resonate with at least some of you listeners. I'm sure there are people who would absolutely be interested in this. And again, I think, I just talked about, really the necessity of taking opportunities when they come your way to, that helps us grow, and that helps us enrich our lives, and it helps us enrich other people's lives. So if we don't know about opportunities, we may not necessarily take them. So I wanted to share an opportunity with your listeners. And this opportunity is part of WorldChicago. It's a program that WorldChicago coordinates in partnership with the U.S. Department of State. And this program is called YTILI. So it's an acronym, YTILI. And it stands for Young Transatlantic Innovative Leadership Initiative. I think I got that right. Hopefully I got that right. But this is an opportunity that allows emerging entrepreneurs from Europe who are making a difference in their communities. It allows them to come to the US for a period of several weeks, I believe it's 5 weeks, and have a fellowship program and experience operations in the same industry the way that they are done in the US. Get that experience, and which will hopefully help them advance their business, build their business, and continue to allow them to continue making a difference in their communities. So if you're listening to this episode, in 2020, the application deadline for this program is March 15th. You can find information on YTILI, YTILI.org. And the application is there. The requirements are there. In case you're listening to this podcast after the deadline, then you can just bookmark this page and apply next year. This is an annual program, so we're looking for a new cohort now. If this is an opportunity that sounds interesting, which I hope it does, we would love for you to apply.
That sounds very interesting. And can I ask, is it a brand new program, or has it been going for a number of years?
It has been going on for a number of years. In fact, this year's cohort will be an in-person cohort. At least that's the plan for right now. So we are very excited about that. So yes, it's been going on for a few years already.
Well, that's fantastic, and we'll share some links to that when we publish.
Thank
the
you so
episode
much,
for
Simon.
people
Much
that are listening to
appreciated.
it. No, that's great. So thank you very much indeed for sharing that. So look, that kind of brings us to the end of our time. Thank you so much indeed, Tatyana. It's been a pleasure.
This was so much fun. Thanks for inviting me, Simon.
Well, look, that's the end of today's show with Tatyana Sergeyeva. And, please do make sure to tune in again to see and or listen to the next VistaTalks show. We'll be once again discussing more interesting topics with interesting people from all around the world. Thank you, Tatyana.
Thank you, Simon.